Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Jalapeno Podcast. This is Ty, your host, and today's episode is with Clara Grossman, aka Cece. Cece is 90 years old, almost 91, and she's a survivor of the Holocaust. She was nice enough to sit down with me and walk me through her experience during that part of her life. And we're all lucky to have her story on record and to get to know her a little bit more here. So thank you for tuning in. Here we go with Clara Grossman. I know that a lot of listeners will be too, and we're lucky to have you on the program, so thank you for giving me some time this afternoon.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I'm just very happy to tell my story because very few of us who are Holocaust survivors who are still alive. I was the youngest set. So, and I'm no youngster anymore. I'll be 91 in September.
Wow.
So, but it's very important for people to know what happened and the Holocaust and how did it happen, and that it should never, ever be allowed. People should never allow to happen again. That 6 million people were killed. Children, adults, older. It was a devastating, horrible, horrible happening. And the world stood by and no one really did a thing. And it just blows you away when you think about it. I was born in Hungary, in a very small town, and the name was Nyírbátor, which is very difficult to pronounce, but I just want to say it was about 300 kilometers from Budapest. And my name, Hungarian name, is Klari. Klari, Herz, Hercz, was my maiden name. And I was born in September 6, 1930, and we were a family, 4 children. I had a brother who was a year older than I, and I was like second, and then I had a sister a year younger, and then a little brother was like 6 years younger, 7 years. So I go back, we were very religious. My father had, 1, 2, 3, 4 brothers and a sister, and one brother immigrated to the United States when he was a young man, and my grandmother used to come by. They lived, we all lived in the same little town, and my father, to him, going to temple every day practically, and his religion was very, very important, and we observed all the holidays, and school started school naturally the same as all over at 5. Preschool and then regular school, and we walked to school, and life was really very good. We were like middle upper class, I would say. My father had a good business. He was in a raw chemical business, buying up all kind of herbs and then have them dried and pressed and sent all over to the pharmaceutical companies. So, it was, we always had everything, and it was a good life. Just children, we played and went to school, and My mom was a wonderful lady. She was a very, very kind. Everybody just loved her in town because she just looked after everybody, took in people who didn't have a place to stay or eat and all that. So, growing up in a loving, wonderful family, even though my mom came from another small town and she was an orphan. She didn't know that till later on, till she got engaged, because her parents had a vineyard and they went down to the cellar to check on the wine and something happened and exploded and they both died in the explosion.
Wow.
And no one told her, and she was raised by an aunt and uncle. And when she got engaged, and they told her that we are not really your parents.
Oh my gosh.
So that was a shock.
Oh my gosh.
And then she broke the engagement, but then she met my father. And in that, see, the religion, it's all arranged marriages. Yeah, you meet someone and sort of, if you like each other, you see each other again, and then you sort of get engaged. It's not my way. But, life was good. The Jews were always persecuted. It was never a feeling that you were just completely free. It seemed like we couldn't walk down sometimes on the street, you dirty Jew, or they would throw a rock at you when we were going to school. And I mean, why? Because we were the same people, and because our religion was different, it was really pretty sad. You always felt that it wasn't an easy feeling of walking to school or going, you always had to look behind you.
That was from fellow classmates or kids your age?
Yes, kids my age, and it was, difficult. The Jews were not allowed to go to the swimming pool. I mean, I wasn't anyway because of being so religious, but certain places the Jewish people were not allowed to go already at that time, and that was way before Hitler.
Right.
So, my mom had an uncle who was in this country. He left very early. He was like 15, 16 years old, and he built a huge ice cream business.
In the United States?
Yes.
Got it.
And he kept sending my mom tickets because he was a great uncle to my mom. And because she knew that, it was his brother, would have been her father who passed away.
I see.
Yeah. And the tickets were all in the drawer always. And my mom kept saying, let's go. And my father always was very hesitant. He never thought that his religion could, God is all over. He could pray all over. But I don't know. As a child, I used to pick that up. Maybe there were other reasons, but somehow another year went by, and we stayed. And then war was breaking out. It was, it's not that the war, but Hitler becoming powerful in Germany. And I heard my parents and local people in town talking that is will be dangerous for the Jews, and it wasn't good anyway. And I couldn't understand why my parents just sat there instead of, picking up and leaving.
So how old were you at this point, 10?
I was about 10,
Yeah.
yes.
So that you heard people talking about that in the neighborhood. Was it in the paper or was it?
Yeah,
Was there
we
kind of
didn't
a-
even had a newspaper.
No
It
newspaper.
was like a shortwave radio somebody had, and they used to meet in our basement
Wow.
and to get the news that what was happening.
I see. So the general feeling was there's this person coming to power who has an opinion, and there's some danger in the air for us. But this is still years before the war.
Yes, it was a few years before. It must have been like 38, 39.
Yep.
And then, Hitler was slowly marching into Poland. I think it was the first country he invaded, and took the Polish Jews into a ghetto. And even then, my parents didn't do much. They were talking about it, that let's say, or maybe we should, go and do something. And then other thing happened around that time. My father's business, he couldn't keep his business. The Jews couldn't have their own business already. And he had to take in a non-Jewish partner.
So that mandate was from the Hungarian government.
Yes.
That said,
yes.
Sir, you can't
yes.
run this on your own.
Right.
Yeah. Interesting.
Yes.
Yeah, because historically, Hungarian government was in cahoots with the German government, eventually becoming part of the Axis powers.
Yes.
And the hope was that, the promise from Germany was that they could help Hungary get back some of their land that they lost along the way.
Right.
Back in World War One.
Right. But
And
it's,
so, yeah.
But the Prime Minister Horthy was in power at that time. He was a good man, and he said, no, I don't, these are my people, and he didn't want anything to happen at that time. That was in 39 and 40 and 41, and slowly each year, Hitler kept moving into and doing unbelievable things. And then, at school, we couldn't go to regular school anymore. We had to go back to there was a Hebrew school, Jewish school, and they wouldn't let us go to the regular school, like I was in like 5th grade or 6th grade.
Yeah. So there are signs, even as a 10-year-old, you remember signs of
Yes.
sense of danger, your father losing control of his business, you're getting moved to a different school,
Right.
segregated with only
Right.
Jews. And then, so the tension is building, you can feel
Building.
it in the air.
Building.
Your parents decided to stay, and then what happened from there?
I was sort of questioning and wondering why we staying. But, I was a young child, and, they said, well, it probably not, it won't anything come here, it's so far away. And as a child already, I said, oh my God, what? We have tickets there. We could just get on the train and go pick the ship and go to a free country. And we had relatives. It's not that you would have been in it's a strange land, but we had someone there who would be helping us. But anyway, they didn't, everybody was just talking and being sort of scared, and anti-Semitism was building up more and more because it was happening all over the world, in Europe. Mm-hmm. And Hitler was getting stronger and stronger. And we were just sitting there. And one day, they called, in the heads of, probably the rabbi or whoever was running things, that they're going to put us into a ghetto.
Wow.
And, I was wondering, I said to myself, you see, we could have left. And then, meanwhile, I had a cousin who came to stay with us in the summer, and she couldn't, it was time when she wanted to leave, she couldn't get on the train anymore. They wouldn't let Jews travel.
Wow. So when you were when the mandate came for you to move to a ghetto, how did that actually play out? Did they come to your house?
Yes,
and then
they
you just
came
moved right away?
They came to the house. Actually, the guy who was the caretaker in my father's chemical barn, the big warehouse.
Yeah.
He was a mean, miserable, and he was like a Nazi, and he made sure that he's the one who's going to come to our house to take us.
He was an employee of your father's?
Yes.
Jeez Louise.
Yes. And I never forget. First of all, they only said, oh, you're just going to go, stay in this, not far from, in an area. It was like a farm type of area. It was like little huts put up all over. And you could only take as much as you could carry. So how much can you carry? Very little. And, my mom made sure that she made up a lot of food and stuff like that. And still, you couldn't believe, and nobody knew what was happening. They never said that we going there was something else, much bigger. We just said, oh, you're going to go to this place, and it will be okay. It's just a few weeks, and then you go back to your home.
That's what they said?
Yes.
So what time, was everybody home at your home when they came knocking? And was it, what was your recollection? What was your feeling?
It was actually in April 1948.
1948?
No, what I'm saying 48. I'm sorry, that's wrong. April 43. Okay? Yeah.
And they came, they knocked, and
They knocked on the door, and my father opened the door, and that guy was standing there. Let me go back.
Yeah.
In the meanwhile, the Germans came into Hungary. Came into all the countries where they were occupying. Hungary was one of the last countries they were able to come in. And because the government sort of kept them out for quite a while. And one day, they just marched in all over the street, and German soldiers. It was the regular army. It wasn't the SS. Okay, so then when that happened, they, said we have to go to the ghetto.
Yep.
The Jews.
And did they say get out of here, get out right now? Was there, how did you get?
They gave us 2 days.
Yeah.
To pack up, leave everything behind.
And report to this address, basically? Or?
Yeah, into the synagogue, to the temple.
Okay.
But there was 3 different, but the largest one that will gather there.
Yeah.
And then they march us through the whole town. And all the townspeople were standing outside. In the meanwhile, we lived in this big, beautiful house, with iron gate, and it was beautiful. And the bank called back the mortgage, so we lost our house. Jews couldn't have. See, it was escalating and escalating, and that's when was the time for my parents pick up and get out. And then we couldn't buy a house. So we rented this house.
Yeah.
And I mean, it was okay. We were still together.
Yeah.
And I told you my cousin came to stay with us,
Yeah.
and she was like 3 years older. And so, that's what we were going. They called us in to go, gathered us to go to the ghetto. Mm-hmm. Yes. Well, after a while, it came that they said all the Jews will have to go in a ghetto.
Yeah.
And then I told you some of our non-Jewish neighbors said
Yes.
that we would take the children, and my parents were afraid to leave us,
Yeah.
even though because they would have been killed, and all of us would have been. And then I had one uncle who was very wealthy, and said he had 2 children, and my other uncle. So they said we tried to get us to Switzerland to get papers, but it was too late.
Too late.
See, they waited too long.
Wow.
They never. Somehow I couldn't ever comprehend how they could just sit there and wait instead of, getting out or going to Switzerland and going to South America, like Brazil. They took a lot of Jewish people at that time.
Right.
And I guess somehow they never thought it would happen.
Yeah. Right.
That's all I could say.
Yeah.
And then there it was. We were, get it. But before we were leaving, my father took all the money, cash, and jewelry, and put it in a big box and took it in the basement, dug a big hole, and all the older, my brother and I, showed it to us where it was, if in case they figured someone, have to know. And my mother put stuff away on the attic, all the, linens and all kinds of things from the house, because, and then, they came, that guy,
Yeah.
and said, we have to go, take whatever you can carry, and walk through town, and some non-Jewish people were very happy, but most of them were very, I thought they were trying to, they felt bad and ashamed. Mm-hmm. And, but, the Germans were there, finished. They had nothing much to say.
Yeah.
They took over.
Yeah. And so the whole family went together to the synagogue.
Yes, they gathered us in the synagogue.
You carried what you could.
They carry whatever you can.
And what was the discussion at home? What was once you got that order? Do you remember how
it was complete disbelief and fright. And what are we going to do? And I, like my cousin, I told you, tried to go back she was from Budapest to her parents. She couldn't get on the train. Jews couldn't travel anymore. We had to wear a yellow star on our clothes to identify us. We are Jewish. Well, yeah.
Yeah. So you go with your family to the synagogue not long after the order, and then what happened after that?
Then the next day they marched us, through town into I don't know how many miles. We walked and walked, and then into a farm area, huge open area with little barracks all over, and that was the ghetto. Mm. And they, everybody took possession at one area, and we had my aunts, and naturally families tried to stay together. And they said, oh, you're going to stay here. You're going to, even then we didn't know that there was a lot worse areas. If we could have just stayed there, let us stay there all during the war, it would have been fine. Because some of our non-Jewish neighbors came out. It was a long trip, and bought food for us, which was really wonderful. And so as children, you don't really comprehend how severe things were, because you're young. You just, you feel you are with your parents, and they are going to take care of you.
Yeah, and your siblings and your family, your relatives are there.
Yes.
And even though it's an abrupt change, you still feel like
You still
things are somewhat
yes,
under control because you're
absolutely,
with your parents.
yes. I mean, it wasn't home, but it wasn't the worst.
Right.
And then one day, they called everybody together, and they said, you have to pack up, just carry whatever you can carry, not much. And they walked us to a railroad area where they had all these huge boxcars, the railroad cars. And they were, they had the little, opened windows, the two sides. And it's where, they carried the cattle and all the stuff. And they took us there. And everybody opened the slide doors open, and put 80 people in one of those. It was like you couldn't move.
Wow.
And that was just horrible. I mean, first of all, we didn't know where we're going. Nobody knew. And second of all, there was no sanitary, conditions.
Yeah.
And there were a lot of elderly, and as the train started going one day, and the next day, and the next day, people were getting sick. Some people died in the train. I mean, everybody, you couldn't go to the bathroom, so everything was done there. Hardly there's no food, only what, we could carry with us. And everybody shared whatever they had, and little water. So it was horrible. It was horrible.
Well, I would just want to say, I can't imagine how hard it is for you to relive this, and
But
to be diving back into it, I imagine is painful. But I just want to thank you, for expressing this, because
it's important, Tyler. It's very important that I speak up, because I don't want this ever happen again. And it's just, I don't like the way the world is now again. It's very frightening, to me especially.
Yeah. So that you were crammed into a railroad car for multiple days, and you're still with your family at this point. And what happened, or where did it go from there?
Okay, we were after the third day. Finally, the train stopped, and it was dark. It was like a big platform, a railroad platform, and opened the doors, and German soldiers all over the place, and a lot of SS at that time. And we didn't know what was SS or, later on, we learned. But, and they had big German shepherds pulling and biting on people. And they kept saying, rouse, rouse, get out, and hitting everybody with their stick. And then they said, men and women separate. So my brother and my father went on one line, big, and then the women stay in one. My little brother, was just 5 years old or 6 years old, so he stayed with us. And as the line, we had my cousin who was visiting us. Her name was Shari, and she was holding my hand, and my little brother was holding my hand, and my mom and my aunt and I don't know, maybe a cousin. And when they saw my little brother, you see, it was darkish, it was early in the morning, and they couldn't see how young I was, but I was taller than I'm now. And they went like this. They threw them, you go that way, and my cousin and I go this way.
So when you said they went like that, just for
They
listeners,
said
you're
separate.
chopping your,
Yes,
yeah.
separating us. So threw them that way.
So you and your cousin, who was around your age, went one
way, and
your
my
brother-
mom and my sister, my younger sister, who was a year younger, and my little brother and my aunt, they went that way.
Wow.
And I never saw them. We didn't know, but they were right away sent to the gas chambers. And we were sent to another side into a big, big hall. They asked you to take everything off, leave all the package, whatever you had, any jewelry, anything, and just naked, took us into a shower. But at that thing, it could have been gas also.
Yeah.
And then water came out, and everybody showered, and then went into another big, big area, shaved your head, cut your beautiful hair, and threw you that striped like a jail, gray and blue stripe, a smock, like a dress, and like wooden clocks, and a number. Well, the number was later on because they couldn't, the first they just gave you that. And we were like, everybody was in shock. And just, and then they lined us. That was Auschwitz, by the way.
I was just going to ask you that.
That was
Thank you for explaining.
Auschwitz, Birkenau, yeah. That was Hitler's big camp,
Gosh.
yeah.
And how long were you there?
Well, because fortunately, it was later on in the war, and they didn't have enough people, to get around anymore. We were, the Hungarian Jews. He wanted to get rid of all the Hungarian Jews. That was his last hurrah. That he said, I want to just get everybody from there. And they were quite successful, I tell you. We were in Auschwitz. Well, they took us into this huge barracks, huge. From one end to another, you couldn't see the end. And both sides were like bunk beds, different 3 levels. And one blanket for the one bed for everybody. One bed, they had like 7, 8 girls sleeping. You were like this, like sardines. And one blanket. And then They gave us a number. You were not no name. You were just a number. But fortunately, see, a lot of people have it tattooed in their arm. It was too late. They couldn't get around to do it. They started to, but never got to. Fortunately, they needed workers, young people, and we were in, there, and they let me go back. Every morning at 5:00, they woke you up, either rain or any kind of weather. You had to go out and stand in line, 5 in a row, for hours and hours till they counted the whole camp. If someone was missing, we stood for another 3-4 hours. It was all wired around, and it was all electric wires. Some people just went crazy and just ran to the wire and killed themselves.
Gosh.
And I was only like 30 years old.
13 years old.
And
Concentration camp.
yeah.
And you were there for how long? Do you know?
But that's April, May, June, like 2.5 months.
2.5 months, and they spared you because you were young and they could put you to work. Is that?
Yes,
yeah.
Fortunately they didn't know how young I was, because otherwise they would have right away sent me to the gas chamber. They only had, what can you do for them?
Sure.
Yeah, and I was strong and healthy, thank God, and I could go and work. And each morning, Auschwitz was the separation camp. That's where you came in. They separated you if you could be a worker. If not, then they killed you. So from there, they selected 1,000 young women from each row. Each time, they took this one, this row, that row. You never knew where you were going. We could have been going to the gas chambers.
Right.
And fortunately, they needed us to work, so the 1,000 of us, a lot of my hometown girls and friends fell into the group. So it was, we could support each other.
Yeah, what was that like? And was your cousin still with you at this
Yeah,
point?
my cousin was still with me.
Tell me about the day-to-day. Tell me more
In
about
Auschwitz?
that. Yeah, what was it like?
It was horrid. I mean, there was no food. Every morning it was like a chowder, some kind of soup that was gray and horrible, and they put all kinds of drugs into it, which we didn't even know, and you got like a little bowl of that was, and a little dark piece of bread that you could hardly, it was like sawdust, and that was till night. And you figure either you starve or you better start eating.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we ate it because there was nothing else.
Right.
And we just stayed on the beds all day long in Auschwitz, and or stood on line till they counted everybody.
Yeah. And then could you communicate with each other? Were you allowed to talk to each other? Or you?
Well, yeah, we could talk to each other, of course. We couldn't. We didn't even know where we were.
You didn't know where you were.
No.
And you were getting ordered around, but you were you doing physical labor, or was it more just?
In Auschwitz, no physical labor.
No. So you were really just sitting. You were waiting. You were sitting and waiting and having no idea.
You're sitting and waiting.
Yeah.
Either you're going to be killed or you're going to be sent to work.
Good gosh.
That was the whole thing.
And tell me, what were you feeling? I mean, it sounds like a silly question because you're obviously, I imagine, afraid.
Feeling, if frightened, desperate, you just, You didn't know where my parents were.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were gone. Fortunately, I had my cousins there
Yeah.
and some of my friends. Otherwise, I can't even tell you. You were just out of body experience. You just never felt. It was like numbness.
Yeah.
You became numb completely. Otherwise, you go and kill yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was so bad.
Yeah. 2.5 months of that, and 2 or 3 months of that, and then one day.
One day, they were selecting young people from each rows. Appeal, they call them the appeal. Stood, morning and evening, and here, go. It was all SS and mean, miserable guys. And they took us into the whole group into a railroad, again into a railroad station, back into the boxcars. And we went from Auschwitz, a day and a half traveled into a town called Stutthof. It was still in Germany. They had a camp there. And even though we thought that that was a work camp, but it wasn't. It was also, they had a crematorium. Evidently, they were waiting for orders to where to send us to work. They didn't have enough railroad cars. And already the war was slowly turning.
Right.
Yeah. And we were there, I think, maybe like 2 months or a month, and then they got an order to send us all of us to this place called Braunau or Bromberg. It was like in Poland, right at the border of Germany and Poland. And it was very desolated, nothing. This camp actually saved my life because it was a work camp and it was a regular army instead of the SS. It was the Wehrmacht, and they were much nicer, if it's possible for the Germans, and we worked very hard. I mean, if you couldn't work, that they said ship you right back to Auschwitz. It was all working hard, and you were so exhausted by the end of the day that you just fell into bed.
What kind of work were you?
Well, let me go. The started working is putting down. See, they needed more railroad running, so we putting down railroad ties. They were building another railroad track, so doing railroad track.
Got it.
I was like 13 years old, and these big boulders. So that was the first one. And then digging big ditches. And I don't know what they were doing, with that. And this was already getting, into fall. And the weather was getting really cold, and we had absolutely no coats or shoes. So, everybody was thinking they had ammunition factories. And actually, it was like a forest, and everything was underground. So they couldn't bomb it.
Wow.
It looked like it was all trees on top of it. It looked like a forest.
Yeah.
So when the planes went by, they couldn't see anything. And so we used to go down into, it was like a basement area, and they were making bombs and grenades. We were making, actually.
Wow.
And I tell you, it had a choice either to freeze to death or to be poisoned.
Yeah.
So, we decided to go back going to work with the bombs and hoping it won't last long, because we knew the war was, winding down and was coming closer and closer. And so we used to sit at a table like this, a long, long, long table, and everybody had like a light that you had to look into, and the bombs and the grenades used to come down on a belt, and you had to look at it and see if it was a crack or something. If it was, then you had to, tell them to put it aside. So, but we would just say, oh, good, good, good. Let them go by.
Yeah.
Even they probably might not explode. So that was easy work, but it was poison. So they gave us a much more food and better food to try to keep us, because otherwise we would have everybody would have passed out. So everything was green, your lips were green from the poison.
Oh my gosh.
And your hands, and you just kept inhaling that. So it was really bad. I have lung issues from that still.
Wow.
Quite a bit.
Jeez.
Yes, it was really very, very bad. But fortunately, it didn't last that long. We kept saying, should we go out or should we? But it was so cold, and it was so nice and warm there. And while you were doing it, you never felt anything. So, we just stayed there and being poisoned. Anyway, it was like January, February, and we could hear noises, all the bombing close by, a lot of planes, and we kept hearing that the Russians were on one end and the Americans on the other, and we were more into the Russian zone. The Russians were. So one day, the German officer came to all of us, called us into a meeting and said, we are asked to empty the camps out, because see, the troops the Russians were coming closer and closer and walking. We will be taking you back to Auschwitz. And we knew we'll never go back there, because they just kill you, poison you. And so with all my cousins, we decided to escape, some kind of escape.
Wow.
Yeah. So, the first day, the next day, in the morning, they got us up and started the whole camp, 1,000 of us started walking. It was very cold and snow on the ground, and it was freezing. And we walked the whole day. And then in the evening, somehow they found some kind of huge barn. They took us in, which was really nice. And so we stayed there, and we then decided the next day we are escaping. So in the morning...
This is you and your cousin?
Yeah, 5 of us.
Your
6 of
friends
us.
that you had made along the way?
We said the first place that we could see, we could do it.
Yeah.
We'll run.
And how did you pick your people? Your cousin?
All cousins.
And all of them were cousins?
And two friends or 3 friends.
Yeah.
It was, we got to know everyone being together.
So you said, okay.
These are all from my hometown.
Yeah.
And we were all very close. And I was the youngest. So they all sort of looked after me.
Yeah.
And one was in 19, 18, 17, that ages.
Older than you.
Yeah.
So you said, okay, here's our team. We're going to escape tomorrow. And what was the plan? What was the...
Well, as soon as we see a reasonable place that we could, run away, we will do it.
While you're marching?
While we're marching.
And so you're just going to the plan
we're
was just
going to
to
take
bail.
off.
Yeah.
So the next day we kept, got us up early, and we were, started to march, and very, very cold. And my cousin who came to stay with us from Budapest, you remember, she couldn't go back, Shari. She had polio before we were away, took us away, and she had braces on her leg, and they just took the braces off. So her leg was really not, it wasn't completely healed, or she couldn't walk. She became crippled, and we all carried her and helped her, and because she said, please leave me here. We said, what, you're going to die. And we just kept her going. And actually there was one woman, German officer, and she was pulling a sled with her stuff, and she kept telling us, you go, I'm taking her. You just keep going. She put my cousin on a sled and pulled her into the next area that it was some kind of town, and put her in with a family, and she told them to take her into the hospital. Would you believe this?
Wow.
Yeah. So that was one wonderful, good thing, that they were not all bad. That's what I want to emphasize. Not all Germans were bad. Some were really very kind and helpful. And but majority got so into with Hitler that they thought he was like God, and whatever he said, it went.
Yeah. And so your cousin was saved by
this
German
officer.
And then you all decided.
The next morning we started walking. That was happened while we were walking, and we were all very close, and we said, let's keep falling back. Let's not walk in the middle or in the front. Let's be in the end. So keep slow down. And we realized they didn't pay that much attention. I mean, they kept looking, and then somewhere far away, we saw smoke coming out somewhere, and we looked at it, and we kept, we said, this might be it. And far away, there was, like a house, in the chimney, smoke was coming out, and there was like a little path, snow was this high, little shoveled or walked with, that we could go. And we said, well, maybe this is it, and let's go for it. And we did. We just ran off on this path and kept running, and so they were shooting, but nothing, fortunately, no bullets ever hit us.
They were shooting at you? Or you don't know?
I don't know. I don't think they were just making, make-believe noises that they will see. And we just took off and ran in towards the house. And dogs were barking all over. And we said, oh my God, whoever it is, they will kill us. And kept opening the door. Big, beautiful farmhouse. No one was in the kitchen. That's where we walked in first. It was warm, the stove was on, and 3 pots with food. Somebody was still making dinner or cooking something, and it was still hot. Evidently, the people just ran off, the German people hiding from the farm.
Wow.
Yes.
Because they were afraid of what's going to happen to them.
Right. They knew that the Russians were coming closer and closer.
So you found
We found
you
this.
got lucky.
Very lucky.
Yeah.
it was like saved us. And I mean, this big, beautiful farmhouse, warm heat and food.
Wow.
I mean, what else could you want?
So
It was a
then-
miracle. It was a
Yeah.
miracle.
Gosh, what a scene.
Yeah.
So how long do you think you ran?
Well, we stayed there. We said, okay, we are here. And first thing is we were starved. I mean, we were all down to like 75 pounds, 80 pounds, skin and bone. And we started eating like crazy. We all got very sick because of stomach was not ready to take all that rich food. So we learned very quickly that's not the way to do it. And we elder cousins looked around and they had rifles in the whole selection, and they learned how to use it very quickly, and always had one, the older girl, in the front door and one in the back door guarding the house.
So you traded off?
Yes. Not me because I was the youngest.
I see.
But the older, girls.
They were
and
standing
we
watch.
standing watch, and we were like, couldn't believe it. We were like in heaven. We couldn't believe we were really free. It was a funny feeling, and I mean we were still in the filled with lice because we haven't had a bath or anything close to it for a year.
Whoa.
So no hygiene or zero. So we were really in bad shape. So right away we were happy to take baths and could get rid of the clothes because we had nothing else to wear. And so we stayed, and then one day the girls noticed that people were walking, like 5 men walking towards the house. And they kept coming closer and closer. And, at first they thought it was, German soldiers. But next to our camp, it was a prisoner of war camp. And it was the same way, wired as ours. And they were French and Italian prisoners there.
Whoa.
Captured, and they were there. And so they came and wanted to, ask if they could stay, and we were happy to have them stay there.
They had escaped too?
They escaped also, yes.
Wow. So what did you do during the day? What were
We slept,
slept
we
in?
ate,
Yeah.
and we took baths. And we just were happy and waiting to be liberated.
How long did you wait?
About a week or
week?
so, yes.
And then the other people joined you? What was their story?
The other people, no
people
one
that were
else.
walking
It
up
was
to the
just
house.
we were the only one who found this place.
But what about
We didn't know what happened. My cousin was taken into a hospital.
But what about the prisoners that came?
The prisoners stayed with us.
They stayed with you.
Stayed
But
with us.
Who were they? What was their story?
Their story was they were captured in the war, in regular fighting, and they put them in there.
And how old were they?
They were married men, in their 30s or so.
Did you get to know them?
Yes, we were so happy to have them there. And one was a baker and one was a chef. So they made all this fabulous food.
Wow.
Yeah. It was just fun. Yeah.
Gosh.
And we stayed, and a week, and one day we saw 2-3 horsemen coming closer to the house, and those were the Russian officers coming in and telling us that we are liberated, we are free, no one can harm us anymore. And we just stood there and cried and hugging each other. And they said, just stay here because the troops, gonna come soon, and then we'll decide what we're gonna do. And we stayed a few more days, and the big Russian troops kept coming, and we were free. We were free. We kept saying, "We're free, we're free."
Yeah.
And we were the first camp to be liberated.
Oh my gosh.
Some people didn't even know what was going on because
Yeah.
they really hid it. They don't want anybody to know. And
So you escaped. You saved your own life.
we saved our own life, basically. We were brave enough, we took a chance. Says, look, what can happen? Either way, they're going to kill us. And let's see if we can make it. And I firmly believe that everybody has a time to be born and time to die. Really. That's how I feel. When your time comes, no matter what you do, something will happen and you'll go. And that was your time to go, past the earth, you finished here.
Sure. But you didn't feel like that was your time.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
no, because we were, saved.
Yeah.
No matter what danger we were in, we always came out of it.
Yeah.
So that's really, it wasn't. It was my time to come back and have a beautiful family.
Amazing.
Yes.
So you're liberated.
You
saved
be liberated.
yourself.
We're sitting still in the Russian, the troops are coming through. And one night, two Russian officers called us in and said, look, girls, we were like 7, 8 of us. The troops are coming through. They haven't seen women for a year or so. And we forget who's going to bother with us. It's so ugly, a horrible condition. He says, it doesn't make any difference to them. He says, I want you to pack up and leave from here and start, going towards a city. This was in Poland. And the next, 50 miles, or maybe 80 miles, was a city, Lublin, and then Warsaw, the capital. Mm-hmm. So we packed up. The next or 2 days later, made all the food that we could carry, everybody, and made little packages and carried it and left the house. And we started walking. Walked all day in the snow, in the cold, and we tried to find a place to sleep. Sometimes we did, sometimes under a tree, whatever, wherever. And then the next day we finally got into Lublin, and it was a market, I remember, and we had zero food by then, and people were helping us, gave an apple or whatever food, and picked up again and walked another 50 miles to Warsaw, the big capital.
Yeah.
And then some people saw us in the striped uniform and shaved hair and terrible condition, and they kept asking, everybody came and asking, well, where are you coming for, what's going on? And we told them.
You told them.
And they took us home. Some of them, people asked us to come and have dinner and have a bath. And then we stayed, we didn't stay, but that was one day.
Yeah.
And then we picked up and kept walking towards the Hungarian border. So the closest we came was Czechoslovakia. And we were hoping and getting a train. But see, all the trains were using, the war was still going on. Mm-hmm. And they were using all the trains. And then finally, we got to the Czechoslovakian border.
This is all walking?
Walking.
How many miles is that?
100 maybe, if not more. kept walking and walk. Well, we couldn't. There was no
No
transportation.
other option, yeah.
Yes.
So you're trying to walk home, basically.
That was it.
Yeah.
We decided we go back and see who's alive.
Yeah.
What's left?
Yeah.
Who's there? And that was the plan. And we finally got to Czechoslovakian border in one town, and there was a train to Budapest. And we had no money or currency, but they just get on the train, I mean, then people were realizing what was going on, and they helped us we got to Budapest, to the capital, and they didn't get around to take a lot of the Jews from Budapest. First of all, there was an underground, and they were working with army, with not the Americans. I don't even know what group was there, and but they were helping, the Americans, and then when they saw us coming in with the striped uniform, they didn't know what to do with us. They were like so overjoyed, and they wanted to know the story, what's happening, and who else is there. And everybody wanted to see if their relatives are safe. Mm-hmm. And we stayed. They took our clothes. I mean, I should have saved my number, because we were numbered, but you were so happy to get rid of it. Yeah. At that point, you didn't care. And we rested there for about a week or so and ate, and we were all really sick because the food, it was too much, yeah. And we were so emotionally and physically exhausted. So, finally you got a train from Budapest to my hometown. We were all from the same town. So we came back to the hometown. And one of the girls had, my cousin who came with us, her brother was on Budapest. She was from Budapest, and her brother was on the underground. So he heard that there are girls coming, and he was hoping it will be his sister, yeah. And me, and it was. And he came down from Budapest to my hometown to welcome us and make sure that we have a big house to move into and food and all that. So that was the first. We got home beginning of April of 45.
45.
Yeah, that was the first survivors that came back.
First survivors.
Yes,
wow.
Because we were, the American war zone of the war was still going on, yeah. In April.
And you escaped on your own accord. You escaped the Nazis. Walked hundreds of miles home, and from there, what happened for you? You eventually...
We got into our hometown, yeah. And there was like a compound of 3 different homes in one courtyard. Mm-hmm. There were 2 brothers and sisters used to live there. So we moved in to 2 of those homes, and first thing was we just slept and got baths, and we were, and then you suddenly realized that, I was an orphan. I had no one. I had no one waiting there for me or survived. I was just all alone. So, my cousins were wonderful. They all sort of looked after me because I was only like 14, 15 years old. And I went to the house where we were taken away, And see, we were renting that, you remember?
Right, yeah.
And the man was standing outside, was there, and I said, "This is the house I was living in. I want to go in and get my furniture." He took everything. When, we were taken away, he just moved into the house.
Wow. And was using all your stuff?
Yeah.
Who is this?
He was just some guy.
You didn't know who he was?
I didn't
Yeah,
even
I
know
see.
who it was.
I see.
None of my neighbors.
Yeah. Did he let you in?
Oh yeah, he had to.
Yeah.
The police came with.
Yeah.
And I went down to the basement, and I remember when my father put all the jewelry and money and dug everything up.
Nice.
I had a big box, and this guy is looking at me, carrying it out, and went up to the attic and took all the linens and everything my mom put away. So brought everything over to my cousins where we were living, and that's what we lived off for, it was April, May, June. We just partied and partied. And we said, every night, drinking wine and having parties, and just that's it. We're just gonna live it up.
Good for you.
Yeah.
That must have been special.
Well, you suddenly realize you are alive, came back, and it took me a while because I was alone. I'm a 15-year-old, and I said, "Oh my God, what am I gonna do?" My cousin said, don't worry. But the only thing was great. I had 2 uncles in this country.
That's right.
And especially one uncle who sent all those. He was looking for us through the Red Cross, and I got a bunch of telegrams wired to let him know. And the Red Cross sent him a telegram that I'm alive.
Wow.
Back in
so
my
you
home.
knew enough to go to the Red Cross, or were there telegrams at the house, or how did you
Yeah,
know to do that?
they sent it to the house.
So you knew he was looking for you?
Yes.
So then you went to the Red
I
Cross?
went to the Red Cross and they tell them that I'm alive.
Wow.
I'm back. He knew that town because he was from there.
And then you went?
And then he right away sent me letter, wired money, and started asking, what do you need? Send packages, tuna fish, chocolates, anything I wanted. Every 2-3 weeks, another package arrived. He was so generous. And then I had my uncle in Philadelphia, but he was not the same way. But I didn't need 2.
Where was this uncle?
Where?
The one that was sending you things?
Where was he?
Yeah.
In Hazelton, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Yeah. Little town.
Hazelton, Pennsylvania. And he was sending you packages. Was he telling you to come to
He
America?
said, he said, I'm sending you papers, sending you affidavits, anything I can. I want you to come here and I'll take care of you.
And so you went?
Well, not right away. First of all, we wanted to make sure that if anybody is alive, would come back home. And it was a long process. They didn't just let you come, which it should have been passed a law at that point, that all refugees, Holocaust people didn't need a quota number, should just immigrate to the country they wanted to go. But they didn't, so that, But I waited with my cousins because my uncle actually, I had my father's brother who, my other cousins were through my father's side. So he sent them papers, but my uncle from Hazelton sent everybody papers, strangers who wanted to come. So I waited, and we were just, summertime and partied. And then one day, and it was, I think, late August, somebody kept calling me, Clary, come, your brother is here. And my brother just walked in from nowhere.
Wow.
Yeah.
The brother that you thought was gone.
Gone. He was my a year older than, yeah.
And he survived.
He survived. See, he survived, and he was in the American zone. They called it the zones, and he was liberated by the Americans.
But because you were separated from him at Auschwitz.
Yes.
And you thought
he and my father. And you didn't hear anything for a long time after we were liberated. I figured he's died.
Yeah.
But he was in no camp was good, but I was lucky to be in a fairly good, terrible camp. But his was Buchenwald and Bergenwald, the worst. He went through a lot. And he stayed in with the Americans because he was looking for family.
I see. But how did he survive?
He barely survived.
But they kept him alive because they...
No, he just...
Because he was strong.
Lucky.
Yeah.
He was strong.
And the same for you. They noticed his strength and they said he could work.
Right.
So we won't kill him.
Right, yeah. Exactly. He was almost dead. He was down to hardly, 70 pounds. Yeah. And they found him.
Wow.
Yeah. And they nursed him back. And the American came into... Eisenhower actually was the first troop that came into, I think it was Bergen-Belsen, and it was a big camp. And but they saw the troops, big men were crying, standing there, their corpse all over, and people, thousands. So he said, I want you to go into town, you get everybody in here, all the townspeople, and I want them to see what they did. And the soldiers, everybody from town came in, and some of them said, we never even knew. And he says, how could you not know? It was right in your backyard. And he was so angry. He said, you look what you did. And it was a good thing that he had to, let the people see. Because they never even, I don't know. I told you, some were good and some were not. Yeah. And that's how it went.
So General Eisenhower marches people to the German town where the camp was to show them the aftermath of what happened in the backyard.
Of their time. And no one they lifted a finger.
Yeah, gosh. That is unbelievable.
Yeah.
And so you're reunited with your brother.
You're
free. You're getting invited to America. And does your brother come with you?
Yes, absolutely. I could have left much earlier. I had a neighbors. My brother's a year or two older, my brother, and he liked me. I didn't even know, that he always thought that I would marry him. And he was going to Israel.
Who's this?
A neighbor.
Okay.
A friend of my brother's. They were neighbors. And he survived. And one day he just came to me. There was, no phones at that time. And said, I always liked you and I would love you to come with me to Israel and build a country and marry me. And I looked at him. I said, look, I'm so young and you are. He says, well, we'll do it together. I said, look, I have relatives in America. I worked very hard while I was so young. I don't want to go and build again. I want to have an easier life, and I want to have some kind of family who will look after us in the beginning. So he understood, and he came down again. I thought maybe he'd change. I said, no, this is it. I was lucky enough to know at a young age what I wanted. And I went after that, what type of life and all that. I was very fortunate. But
And you wanted a family, you wanted a
yes,
comfortable life.
right.
And you wanted to
Yes,
be safe and
I
free.
wanted to come to the United States first of all because I had most of my family here,
Yeah.
and my other cousins were coming here also, and there was no question about it, but it was difficult because I told you they didn't, send the quota numbers went by the country, and Hungary being a small country only got 2-3 numbers a year. And so what they did, there were all these thousands of refugees all over Europe, in Germany, and the UNRWA, United Nations organization, came in. Eisenhower, the government, and organized this big help, how would you say, organizations to help all the refugees. They set up big camps again to get everybody into housing, and because they were in the camps, and zero money, and they were in terrible shape.
Right.
And so they opened up like old army bases, and they, got food, and Red Cross came in, and different organization to get these things moving and helping people to come back.
Got it. And so you eventually made it back to America, and then you began.
Well, eventually, my uncle found out the only way that we were orphans and went to an orphanage in Germany and stayed there for like 2 months, 3 months, till we got a visa, a ticket to come to this country.
Your uncle arranged for you to get to an orphanage?
Yes.
I see.
Yes.
I see. So you spent 3 months there
And-
with other orphans.
With other orphans, yes.
You and your brother.
Yes.
Yeah. And you waited there until you were free
We
to go.
got tickets. We took the train to Bremenhaven, which the seaport, where we took the ship, and with other orphans. I don't know, they were from all over the world, from Latvia and from Poland, from all over. I don't know, like 50 coming in on that ship.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then you get to America and you live with your uncle and you start your life in America and you get married in America and you start a family, and now you are 91 years old and you have all sorts of children and grandchildren.
We
and
have
great-grandchildren.
three married daughters, 8 grandchildren, 5 great-grandchildren. That's the miracle. That's why I was sent back.
Yeah.
And they just beautiful, wonderful people, kind and nice, and just sometimes I sit there and I said, "Is this really happened?"
Yeah.
Just
Well-
very blessed and grateful.
An incredible story, and looking back on it, what did you learn about yourself, about life? What stands out to you now, other than the gratitude and the appreciation of the miracle? What would you say?
I would say I was fortunately strong enough and made right decisions, and I came back in pretty good shape because I was young. If I would have been a few years older, I think it probably would have been entirely different, because I was able to you never forget, never, I forget it, but I put it way back in my mind that I do not live with it from day to day. I decided when I came to this country, I'm starting, first of all, I wanted to come to this country. And I said, I'm starting a new life and I want the best I can get and go for it and have, the family that I lost and built a beautiful life and enjoy life. Enjoy each day. Every day is a gift. We don't know if you're going to get up in the morning. So each day when you get up, you take it as a gift. We lose that. We just get so busy and we take it for granted. Even me, who shouldn't,
Right.
and I do, but I keep reminding myself that just enjoy and be kind to good to each other. The world is getting too not so good. I'm very, very disappointed. And I want people to realize what, and help each other. And it doesn't make any difference what color and what religion or who you are. We are all one. And we all have to love each other. And you are the best, Tyler.
You are the best.
Thank you so much.
You are a force, and they recognized your strength, but they didn't know the half of it. And your strength kept you alive then, and we're all so lucky to hear your story.
Thank you so much for inviting me to tell my story, because it's so important for people to know, because we don't ever want this happen again.
That was Clara Grossman. Thank you, Clara, so much for being on the show and for sharing your story. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Thank you as well to Aaron Mason for your sound editing on this episode and all the others. And until next time, this is Ty, your host. Thanks for listening to the Jalapeno Podcast. Take care.